Welcome to the AP Sports Pod. We've got a new setup this year, trying to do some video rather than just the straight audio recording using Adobe. So maybe this shows up on YouTube. I think we've got a YouTube channel brewing. It won't be exclusively for the AP Sports Pod, but it will be hosted by my parent sports media company, which is Annexus Sports. So you'll see the AP Sports Pod there, hopefully. You will also see a buddy of mine and I have entered the Westgate Super Contest in Vegas. So you'll likely see our recordings and our picks on the channel as well. I individually went into the Circa Million contest, so that will be part of my regular weekly show when I'm able to record. Hopefully that's every week. This is the AP Sports Pod NFL season preview. We'll go over my predictions for the AFC, which you can see on the screen right now. Then we'll go to the NFC, and then we'll conclude with my NFL futures bet. Where do I have my money heading into the 2023 season, which is just over 24 hours away from kickoff in Kansas City with the Lions facing off against the Chiefs. All right. Enough of the intro stuff. Let's get into my AFC predictions, which are on the screen right now. We'll run it straight across. Division winners across the top. We've got the Bengals, the Jags. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on the Jets. Initially this summer, I was like, oh, Jets. I'm not sure I buy the hype. Aaron Rodgers. Salah, I'm not sure about. What's going to happen? I watched Hard Knocks. I loved Aaron Rodgers. I thought Salah was pretty much a non-factor. As a matter of fact, now that I'm thinking about it, Salah might have been more of a negative. I'm not big on Salah. Not big on Salah, the head coach. As a Niner fan, loved Salah, the defensive coordinator, but not big on Salah, the head coach. Anyway, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on the Jets. I have them winning the East as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. And then obviously Kansas City in the West. I think it would be hard to pick any other team to win the AFC West. Kansas City's kind of got that locked up. Wild card teams. This is where it gets pretty interesting because the AFC is loaded and has quite a bit of depth in the middle top-ish range. These teams could win the division, but I think they end up in wild card. I think the Ravens just drive me crazy. It's why I cannot pick them to win the division. They just seem to blow games that they should win. So this is what I say about the Ravens. They're just hard to trust. I cannot trust the Ravens. It's too much analytics. It's too much justification for weird decisions. It's just too much. And they have the greatest kicker in the history of the NFL. And they still blow games. So hopefully the Ravens have a healthy and happy Lamar Jackson. Hopefully they can get their act together for a full season, and we'll see what happens. I think the Ravens' top end is Super Bowl, but I just don't trust that they're going to get to that level. So I've got them just shy of the Bengals as they were last year, making the playoffs as a wild card. My second wild card there, the Tennessee Titans. Everybody is down on the Titans and people are sleeping on the Titans. This is why I'm not. Let's go back. It would be 3 seasons ago now. 3 seasons ago, they ended Tom Brady's career in New England. And say what you want about that. Solid team in the playoffs. Go to Foxborough. Smash the Patriots. That's it. Brady goes to Tampa. The following season, the Tennessee Titans, and this might be a little fraudulent, but the Tennessee Titans were the number 1 seed in the AFC. Last year, they were terrible. Not really. The Tennessee Titans started the season 7-3. And then the wheels fell off. So, do I think Tennessee is as good as Jacksonville? No, I don't think they're quite as explosive. I don't think they're quite as dynamic on offense. But what I like about Tennessee is they have an identity. You know how they're going to play. They are going to smash you in the mouth with Derrick Henry. I like the addition of Tajay Spears at running back in the draft. I'm going to talk about the draft momentarily. Treylon Burks is out for a little while, but I like Treylon Burks. I like the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. This is a team that I don't think is that bad. I think they're very solid. I think they play tough. I think they play a lot of close games. They play winning football, and people over-remember when they're bad. Like last year. They lose to the Giants week 1. Okay, Dayball goes for 2. Week 2, they get blown out on Monday Night Football against Buffalo. And keep in mind, Buffalo had just railroaded the Rams, and then they came back and blew out the Titans in week 2. People over-remember that stuff. The Tennessee Titans are a solid football team. And what I like about them, another thing I like, is self-awareness. Their offense was not good last year. What did they do in the draft? Okay, I mentioned the running back they drafted. Did I mention they picked every player was on the offensive side? I think they have a tremendous amount of self-awareness. I like Mike Vrabel at coach. They have an identity. They stick to their identity. They will smash you in the mouth. They play a style that travels. They play a style that works well as the weather gets colder. I think the Tennessee Titans are much, much better than people give them credit for. My third wild card, and I'm just going off a list here. I don't necessarily think this is the order they're going to finish. I'm going to go with Buffalo. I think the hype and the drama over Buffalo is probably overblown by the media. For 6 months, they're looking for something to talk about. Let's talk about the Bills. Let's create storylines on the 49ers, which we'll get to in a little bit. As a 49er fan, that's the team that I follow the most. I think Buffalo's still very good. They've got Josh Allen. They've got Diggs. If Von Miller stays healthy, the defense is going to be better. Buffalo's going to be fine, in my opinion. I just think the Jets have a little bit more juice to get over the hump and finish in first. So there it is. Those are the 7 playoff teams. Division winners: Bengals, Jags, Jets, Chiefs. In the wild card: Ravens, Titans, Bills. Now let's talk about the bubble. There's a lot of good teams in the AFC that are not going to make the playoffs. I think Denver is going to be very good. I think the Steelers are going to be really tough. I think the Dolphins could be really good. And I say they're really good. I think they were overrated last year. I don't think the Dolphins were that good last year. Statistically, they weren't that good. Everybody thinks, they have a great offense. Oh my gosh, Tyreek Hill, Tua, Jalen Waddle. They're so good. They weren't really that good. The average number of points scored in the NFL last year was 22. They only scored over 22 points 4 times. That's not good. What I like about the Dolphins is Vic Fangio. They brought in a legitimate defensive guy. So pair that with maybe a better offense, or an offense that matches perception with a good defense. To have Jalen Ramsey, who's another person that, big name. But as a Niner fan, I saw the Niners play the Rams all the time. I don't know if Jalen Ramsey's that good. I really don't. I'll put him on the bubble, primarily because they got a new defensive coordinator. My surprise team in the AFC, it's a team you don't see anywhere on my screen. It's not a playoff team. It's not a bubble team. I'm sounding the alarm for this one. This is my surprise big prediction for the AFC. The Los Angeles Chargers are not going to be good. They weren't good last year. They won 10 games on a team that should have probably won 8. They played a cupcake schedule. They beat one team that finished over 500 last year, and their schedule is way harder this year. So look for a massive decline in the LA Chargers. I don't have them in the playoffs. I don't even have them on the bubble. I'll talk about them more in a little bit when I get to my futures. All right, let's switch it over To the NFC, here's the NFC playoff picture as I see it. Division winners, we've got Detroit, New Orleans, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. So there are our two new playoff teams in the mix right there, the Lions and the Saints. I give the Lions a slight edge over Minnesota, primarily because I think they had the second biggest non-player move in the NFL this offseason. And that was retaining Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator. Number one, I would say Sean Payton goes to Denver. That's the number one non-player move. Number two, Detroit retaining Ben Johnson as offensive coordinator. I give them a slight edge over Minnesota because head to head, I think Detroit plays Minnesota tough. In the last couple of seasons, I feel like Minnesota's probably gotten lucky beating Detroit a couple times. And so I think Detroit's going to take the next step. You know, they barely missed the playoffs last year. I think they'll get in this year. And with somewhat of a decline in the Vikings, I think Detroit might overtake Minnesota as the division winner. They might end up with a tiebreaker. They might both end up 10-7 and it goes to a tiebreaker. I could see something like that. I'm going to give Detroit the slight edge as the ascending team, Minnesota as the team in decline. Now let's talk about Minnesota. Minnesota was overrated last year. They were terrible. You know, they gave up more points than they scored. I think it was either close or that was actually a true statement. Here's the thing about Minnesota. They're good. Did they overachieve last year? Did they win a lot of one-score games? Yes, but so did the Eagles. Nobody's talking about the Eagles going into much of a decline. The Vikings are bringing in Jordan Addison. You know their offense is going to be pretty good. They lost Dalvin Cook, but if you actually think that running backs are replaceable, they won't miss Dalvin Cook much at all. And here's what I like. Similar to the Dolphins, they brought in Brian Flores. If you go back in the archives of the APSportsPod, I thought the Vikings should have hired Flores as their head coach last year. They didn't. They went with an offensive coach. Fine. Fast forward a year. Now they bring in Flores as a defensive coordinator. The Vikings are going to be tough. The Vikings are going to be solid. The Vikings will have somewhat of a decline. But for a team that won 13 games last year, people think they're going to slide all the way out of the playoffs in the NFC? Playoffs? Playoffs? Yeah, they're still going to be in the playoffs. I do expect them to fall back a little bit, but they're not going to go from 13 wins to like 5 or 6 wins. Not with Cousins, not with Justin Jefferson, not with Jordan Addison, not with Hawkinson, not with an improved schematic defense under Brian Flores. They're not going to fall back that far. Come on, folks. Let's go to the NFC South. I think the Saints are the cream of the crop. I think the Saints have the highest ceiling in the division. Right? A lot of people are down on Derek Carr. I happen to like Derek Carr more than most. Don't like the Saints coach. Don't like the Saints coaching staff. I like their home field. I like their defense. I like the upgrade in quarterback. I think Derek Carr is significantly better over Dalton and Jameis Winston. I like the potential return of Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara. I mean, they've got some players. Let's not pretend like the Saints don't have some good, proven NFL talent. Is their coach going to get in the way? Because that division stinks. You want to take the trendy Atlanta Falcons? You want to take the trendy Carolina Panthers? You want to take the left for dead Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I don't. The Saints should win the NFC South. So I've got them there as the lone team in the division making the playoffs. NFC East. 3 teams in. Eagles are in. Cowboys are in. Giants are in. Same 3 as last year. What do I want to say? Eagles, everybody loves the Eagles. I'll mention a little bit about the Eagles here in a moment. Dallas, I think Dallas is good. I think Dallas is solid. I think they're building their team the right way. They've got the defense. stout defense, enough of an offense. I think the subtraction of Ezekiel Elliott as a distraction or a question mark, or is he going to play, or why is he not good anymore? I think that's a plus for them, getting rid of him. I think Pollard will be better. I think Deuce Vaughn's going to contribute. I happen to like Dak Prescott. Dak's one of my favorite players in the league. I'm not saying he's the best quarterback in the league, but I think Dak Prescott's good enough to win a Super Bowl on a team that is good enough to win a Super Bowl. I'll put him in I think he's better than Garoppolo. I think he's better than Carr, but I think he's better than Cousins. I put him in the group of quarterbacks that are good enough to win a Super Bowl, but won't be the reason the team wins the Super Bowl. If Dallas wins the Super Bowl, it's because they're going to have a great defense with playmakers and a good enough offense. Similar to the 49ers in the Jimmy Garoppolo era. Great defense, solid quarterback that helped, but wasn't the reason the team was good. If you look at Buffalo, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Burrow, guys like that, Mahomes, they're the reason those teams are good. Dak won't be that guy. But I still think the Cowboys are plenty good to make the playoffs. And the New York Giants. Here's another one. In my estimation, and there was a gap, but the Giants were the fourth best team in the NFC last year. What changed? They paid Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones doesn't seem like the type of guy that's going to be running around spending all his money. Okay, not preparing for games. They had the little riff with Saquon Barkley's back. They added Darren Waller. Their decimated wide receivers probably will be healthier than they were this year or last year. Why doesn't anybody think the Giants are going to be good? I think the Giants are in. I would almost have the Giants as a lock to make the playoffs. The Giants are ascending. And people are down on the Giants. Their win total this summer went from 8.5 to 7.5. Like, you really think the Giants are that bad? I'm banking on Brian Daboll. I'm banking on that team continuing to get better. Do they play in a tough division? Sure. But didn't they play in a tough division last year? They only won one game in the division last year. And they still made the playoffs. Giants are in. Giants are going to be good. 49ers are the class of the NFC West. I know a lot of people want to talk about the Seahawks, and the Seahawks I have in my bubble. If you see it there on the screen, if you're watching this, if you're just listening to it, Seahawks are one of my bubble teams. The bubble in the NFC is too big because I don't know if any of these teams are very good other than the top teams. The Niners should be fine. I don't really care who plays quarterback. I think getting rid of Lance was a good idea. Nothing against Lance. We don't know how good he is. This team cannot have an experiment at quarterback at this point in time. If Purdy stays healthy, the 49ers will be good. I even think if Purdy gets hurt, Sam Darnold might be the best quarterback on the roster. And that's going to sound crazy. People are going to be shocked by that. We have no idea how good Sam Darnold could be because he has only played on terrible teams. He got drafted by the Jets, who were 5-11, I think, when he got there. Then he goes to Carolina, playing for something called Matt Rule, and they were 5-12. Right? He's just been on awful, awful teams. So it wouldn't surprise me, even if Purdy gets hurt, that Darnold goes in there and plays really well. All right. So there it is. Lions, Saints, Eagles, Niners, division winners. I got Vikings, Cowboys, and Giants. Repeat playoff teams from last year. So the only two new playoff teams there, we got the Lions and the Saints. Bubble teams, Carolina. What do I like about Carolina? I like that they got a new coach whose specialty is on offense. I like that they got the defensive coordinator from Denver. I like that they already had a pretty good defense. So they attained a good defensive coach to help with that side of the ball. The Falcons, I put the Falcons on there just because I guess I'm FOMOing on the Falcons. Everybody loves the Falcons, so I'm kind of swayed by that a little bit. I like Desmond Ridder more than most people. I'm not sure about Drake London. I'm not really even sure about Kyle Pitts. Bijan Robinson, rookie running back, okay, could make a difference. So I would say their offense might be pretty good. Just don't know how many games they're going to win. They'll take a couple from Carolina, perhaps, but then Carolina's going to be down. Are they going to take a couple from Tampa Bay? Yeah, Tampa Bay doesn't show up on my screen anywhere. They're not a playoff team. They're not a bubble team. I've got Tampa Bay left for dead, potentially in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. Green Bay, another team that I don't think is going to be as bad as people expect. I don't expect the drop off to be great. I think there's probably a new energy, a new excitement with Jordan Love. We don't really know how good he is. Will he be that much worse than a disgruntled Aaron Rodgers last year? I don't know. So I think there's a lot to prove in Green Bay. And I think they're good enough to prove some people wrong. They've got young wide receivers. They still have Aaron Jones. We'll see what Jordan Love can do. I think it's a solid football team. I don't think they reach a higher echelon because of the question mark at quarterback, but I think they'll still be better than most people expect. And the Seahawks on the bubble, just because I don't think they can catch the 49ers. And again, if I put them against the other teams that I think are going to be in the playoffs, how many of these games do I think they'll win against the Giants, against the Cowboys, against the Vikings, against the Saints? If they played those teams head to head, and they probably do, I don't have the schedules pulled up. I don't think they're winning many of those games. So just by default, I've got to stack them lower. So that's that. Let me go with my surprise. My surprise pick in the NFC. Now, this is not indicated here in my predictions, but it wouldn't shock me if this happened. I think there's a real possibility the Eagles don't make the playoffs. Yeah, I said it. They have wonderful talent. They've got the entire Georgia defense from the last 3 years. They've done a great job drafting players and trading players and maneuvering. I do not like the brain drain in Philadelphia. They lost both coordinators, one to Arizona, one to Indianapolis, head coaching positions. I don't know if schematically they're going to win games Monday through Saturday. If you remember, a lot of the Eagles games last year were they blew people out early in the game, and then they just kind of relaxed and hung on, pinned their ears back, racked up a lot of sacks. With both coordinators gone, I don't know that they jump out to those big leads consistently every week. So I have a real concern over the Eagles that they've got a brain drain. Their game planning is not going to be as strong. They're not going to jump out to as many big leads. And potentially, we heard the 49ers talk about this after the playoffs. The 49ers were going to expose the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. Purdy gets hurt. Josh Johnson gets hurt. We've got McCaffrey and Juszczyk warming up to play quarterback. That game was over early. We have Kansas City exposing Philadelphia Eagles. Not everybody's got Kansas City's talent. Nobody else has Mahomes. So you've got that factor. Keep in mind, Mahomes was hobbled in that game. So is there a possibility the NFL got somewhat of a score against the Eagles? Is it possible that with the brain drain, losing both coordinators, they're not going to have as big of an advantage between games, winning games Monday through Saturday? I think there's a real possibility. It would be the surprise in the NFC, but we saw it with the Rams last year. Did anybody think the Rams were going to fall all the way out of the playoffs? I don't think so. So my surprise pick of the year, I don't have any money on this, but it wouldn't shock me if Philadelphia falls from number 1 to out of the playoffs. Who takes their place? I have no idea. One of my bubble teams, I would probably say of the bubble teams I have on there, we'll go Seattle as the first team on the outside looking in. So there it is. Lions, Saints, Eagles, Niners winning the divisions. Vikings, Cowboys, Giants, wild card, playoff teams. Let's take a look at my futures. Where do I have my action? Where is the money placed as we head into the 23 season in just over 24 hours? There it is. Another hype train team. I don't get it. The Chicago Bears. A team I didn't even mention in talking about the NFC. I think did I mention every other team in the NFC but the Chicago Bears? Chicago Bears under 7.5 wins. I love playing the win totals. We did a little more diversification this year because the Caesars Sportsbook, was doing some tricky things with alternate win totals this year that were different from last year. So you'll see a little more variety in our picks. But the Bears under 7.5 wins. I don't care that they have Claypool. I don't care that they got the wide receiver from Carolina. I care about the coach, who I don't think is very good. And I care about the fact that they're the worst team in that division. And I don't think it's close. I think Adam Rank, who is a Chicago Bears fan, had the Bears winning 12 games. Are you serious? Where can I get action on that? So I'm not buying the hype on the Bears. Denver Broncos, mentioned them earlier. This is a bet on Sean Payton. For years, I was saying don't bet against Russell Wilson. I have my doubts about Russell Wilson right now. I don't have my doubts about Sean Payton. This team could win 10 games. This team could make the playoffs. I just stuck with over 8.5 wins and I left it at that. That is a bet on Sean Payton on a team that already has a good defense. They're banged up. So I'm a little nervous. Maybe I don't go with them week to week in the contest. But I've got them over 8.5 wins. I've got them as a second place team in the AFC West behind the Chiefs. The Washington Commanders, or the Commanders for now, or the Commandos, or the Commies, whatever you want to call them. I've got them under 7.5 wins. I took that early in the summer. The win total dropped to 6.5. I'm on under 6.5. This is a team that's in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. Don't give me this Sam Howell stuff. I watched the preseason games. He looks pretty good. Don't give me the Sam Howell business. Okay? Everybody's local media wants to put rainbows and unicorns out there. Okay, maybe with the exception of the 49ers. And I should have talked about this before. If I remember, I'll double back to the 49ers. Sam Howell, oh my God, he's the greatest quarterback. He's so much better than Heineke and Wentz. He's going to be the savior of the Commanders. They're going to be in the playoff. This team should not want to be very good. I don't think it's in their DNA. I don't think it's in Ron Rivera's DNA to, I don't like the word tank, but intentionally not try as hard as you can to win every single game possible. And you can do that through game planning. You can do that with, we're just not going to blitz very much. We're going to play a base defense. We're going to run just very quote unquote vanilla offensive packages and not used personnel and motion and all this other stuff. You can do that and just be easier to beat. The Washington Commanders should absolutely be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. There is a major benefit to not being very good this year. I think I mentioned Tampa Bay, Caleb Williams sweepstakes. I think the Raiders could be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. I think the Cardinals could be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. And even if the Cardinals want to commit or want to stick with Kyler Murray, there's still huge value to having the number one pick this year. And you could trade it for a boatload of other things. So there is real incentive to not be very good this year. Washington should be one of those teams that's trying not to be very good. Minnesota Vikings, talked about them quite a bit on my NFC picture here. Over 8.5 wins. Got them yes to make the playoffs. And even though I'm not predicting it, the number was good on the Vikings to win the division. I still think there's a real possibility they do win the division. Again, I mentioned I think they could end up tied with Detroit. Could come down to a tiebreaker. I'll take the better number. Yes to win the division with Minnesota. The Minnesota trifecta. over 8.5 wins. Yes, to make the playoffs. Yes, to win the division. Tennessee Titans. 2 bets on the Titans. Over 7.5 wins, which I think is kind of disrespectful for a team that was 7-3 to start last year. The number 1 team in the AFC the year prior. Not much has changed. Not much has changed. And I've got them yes to make the playoffs. That one's a little bit of a reach. Because again, if I look back at my bubble, you do have Pittsburgh. You do have Miami. I forget the other team I put on the bubble over there. Just not the Chargers. You'll see them at the bottom of the screen there. We're getting to them. Giants are in the exact same position as Tennessee. And I'm more confident that the Giants will win over 7.5 games. I'm more confident that the Giants will make the playoffs. I think relatively speaking and comparatively, if you're looking at the Giants in the NFC and Tennessee in the AFC, the Giants are higher up the board in the NFC. Again, I think they were the 4th best team in the NFC last year behind the Eagles, Niners, and Cowboys. Then there was a gap. Then you had the bunch of Giants, Minnesota, Seattle. Giants went into Minnesota and won. I'm going to give that to the Giants, and I think they're going to be better this year than they were last year. And last but not least, probably my favorite bet, Chargers under 9.5 wins. They weren't good last year. They won more games than they should have. There's a lot of reasons to like the Chargers. They're flashy. They have cool looking uniforms. They have good wide receivers. They have Justin Herbert. They're often injured. So are their best players playing that much? No. And they have Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley, overly analytical. Brandon Staley is the guy, in at least in the football world, which is, you know what the fastest way down from the 10th story? The fastest way down is to jump out the window. I think Bill Simmons mentioned something like that on a podcast or article or something last year. Like, that's true, but is that what you should do? Brandon Staley will cost the Chargers 2 games this year. Their schedule is ridiculously harder than it was last year. And this is something that I haven't heard anybody talk about. Maybe nobody thinks it's relevant. They have an early bye week, which I never think is good. And after their bye week, so I think this is starting week 5 or week 6, they play every other game on the road. They go home, road, home, road, home, road, home, road, home, road, the rest of the season after the first 4 or 5 weeks. I don't think that's good either. And if you look at the schedule analysis, if you look at the teams that they played last year versus the teams that they're going to play this year, we're talking about they got to play Atlanta and Cleveland last year, I think. They're going to get Baltimore, Dallas, and Tennessee. Do you think they're going to go 3-0 against those 3 teams? I don't. I think the Chargers will be the surprise team of the year. I'm not sure Brandon Staley lasts the season. I think they're going to start. There's a real possibility they start off 0-3. They could lose to Miami week 1. They could lose to Tennessee on the road week 2. And they could lose to Minnesota on the road week 3. Just look out. If that happens, the Chargers are going to go into a tailspin. They're going to get smashed. Staley won't last the season. And they're going to have a disastrous season. I'm talking like they might win 5 or 6 games. They could have double-digit losses, the Chargers. So I'm banking on that. There it is. That's going to conclude the NFL preview and a look ahead at my futures. We'll be tracking these all season long. This is the AP Sports Pod. It's going to show up on our Nexus Sports channel along with my little show with my buddy as we go through our experience in the Westgate Super Contest. And you should see that coming out relatively soon. Peace.